Thanks for clicking on this video to check out the numbers I gave in the previous video you just watched. Be aware that you won't be able to find this video any other way except by going through the first one. So if you want to find this video again, you have to go through the first one and find the links. It's not searchable because it's unlisted. Also, I appreciate if you want to check out my numbers, you're welcome to it. I don't expect you to believe everything I say because, frankly, everything you've been hearing about Fukushima is probably a lie. Okay, so let's begin. We're going to be first going over these the numbers of how I come across the number of incidences of cancer. We've chosen the U.S. because first of all, there's some clear numbers about cancer incidences in the U.S. and also the fact that all the servicemen that supposedly were affected on the USS Ronald Reagan and the flotilla that accompanied it are going to be U.S. citizens. So these numbers are what we're going to be using here. So first of all, cancer, U.S. cancer diagnosis. This will be 2018 numbers. It's a projected number. You can see them here. It comes from the National Cancer Institute. And the numbers on that page are right here. Right here. In 2018, estimated 1.7 million new cases of cancer will be diagnosed in the United States. That's where that number came from. Okay? So we have about 1.7 million people that are going to be diagnosed, new diagnosed cancer every year in 2018. Now, the next figure here, populations of the U.S. in 2018. These aren't going to be very contested figures for anybody. That number comes from here. Let's see, right to here. U.S. populations, also 2018, picking the same year, 326, almost 327 million in 2018. All right, so that's where that number comes from. All right, so we have, that's the number here. So now to take these numbers, we take the population, which is here, population, and the number of incidences, new incidences of cancer every year, and we would expect to get a percentage here of 0.531 would be the expected percentage of people to get cancer every year by the 2018 numbers. So in other words, every year we expect about a little over 0.5% of the populace to get cancer. All right, this is not even talking about Fukushima now or the USS Ronald Reagan. All right, so the next thing now, we're going to check out these other numbers because I got two sets of numbers, even from the same website, because by different years. Now back to this page again, we already covered this. Number of new cases of cancer incidence is 439.2 per 100,000 men and women based on 2011 to 2015 cases. So this is exactly the time frame we're looking at here of when this actually happened, not necessarily 2018, all right? So the number is 439.2 per 100,000. I have that number here again, 439.2 cases per 100,000 per year in the years 2011 to 2015. So if we take that 100,000 cases, and of those we have 439.2, we come up with a number of 0.44% that would be expected to get cancer in that time period of 2011 to 2015 based on the numbers given to us. So these numbers don't match. 0.44 and a 0.531 don't really match, but this still makes sense if you look at it because 0.44 is the years we're going to be using. But up here, this is 2018 projected numbers. These are cancer incidences, so the population has risen. Let's see if I have that written in here. I do have it back here, population in the United States. You'll see that the years between 2011 and 2015, we had about somewhere, we don't have exact numbers here, but we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 310,000, 310 million population. The numbers we were using before is 326 million. So we're talking about 15 million more population projected in 2018. So going back to our numbers, that would be what you would expect to see this difference, because this is number of incidences in a projected 2018 with more population than we have down here. So these numbers are probably would match if it were to come to, I hate that Windows 7 thing, Windows 8 thing actually. I got Windows 7 with 8. But anyway, these two numbers don't match, but they would probably match if you were to factor in the fact that this is a projected number with the number of people increased in the time period between 2011 to 2015 to 2018. Okay, the next part is going to get a little confusing, but I'm trying to make this accurate as I can and try to get you to understand what's going on here. The numbers we just went over here, is for the general populace. For military purposes, that number would be skewed. So what we need to do is find out through, because what we see here is this. Now these numbers for the UK, we're not going to use these later, but basically in the time period we're talking about, as you can see, as you become older, the incidence of cancer increases. So when you get in your 60s and 70s, it obviously comes very sharply higher, and the younger crowd suffers cancer incidences much less frequently. So what we need to do is find out the age of the military. So what I've done here, and this is going to become from this directly from the year we're looking for, 2011 demographics. So this is straight from the U.S. military. And if you look up here, the page number of the next few pages, you'll be able to look up to find these easier. This is the cover page. So if you want to find that later, just look up the page number. We have to find out the age of servicemen. And as you can see here by this chart, 25 or younger, 43% of the active duty, this is active duty, including officers, 25 years or older, younger, a huge chunk. So obviously our military is going to be younger. And here's the breakdown of the other ages. But I can break this down to an average much easier because they give us that chart as well. This is all active duty, including officers and enlisted. And the Navy is what we're concerned about here. This is the number we're using, 28.9. So say 29 years old is the number we're going to be using to try to find the age category we're talking about, the levels of cancer in that age category. And to do that, we're going to be using statistics from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, United States Cancer Statistics. This is official government numbers of cancer. And we'll start looking at these charts. Here's a chart very similar to what we saw with that UK one I showed you before. As you see, as you get older, you get more of an incidence of cancer. This is all cancers by all races, all sexes, and it's 100,000 per 100,000 people. All right. And as you can see, the numbers we're looking for, remember, we're looking for age 29 pretty much as an average. 25 to 29 age group is here, and the 30 to 34 age group is there. What we kind of want, because it's the high end of this chart, we probably want to take an average of these two to get an idea of what our number should be. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact numbers of what these are. Didn't provide those numbers, so I don't know what these actual numbers are. So here's what I had to do. It's going to get a little strange here. Let's go down to another section that I've made up here. Okay, U.S. cancer prevalence. Now, but before I get the prevalence, so we're showing a 5-year period. What I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to show you also this next one. All right, this is from the Center for Disease Control again. Prevalence and percentage estimates. 5-year limited duration. All cancers, all sexes, all races. Here's the numbers of incidences for 5-year periods. This says 5-year limited duration. So between 20 and 29-year-olds, we have 75,000. Number of people come down with cancer in that age group for 5 years. That's a 5-year number. 30 to 39, 176,000 every 5 years. So these are our starting number here. So we take those two numbers. This is our count for the 20 to 29-year-olds. This is where I transfer the numbers, 176,000 over here for 30 to 39-year-olds. All right. So that's the number I've come up with. And what I find is, let's see, how would I do this? Okay, what I want to do is I want to take these numbers and I want to kind of make an average of them because I don't want this group exactly and I don't want this group exactly. I want what's kind of between there. So I've taken these two numbers to average. You just take both those numbers and you add them together and you come up with a third number. And then to be an average of 2, it's because there's two numbers here, I divide it by 2. That gives me my average, and this comes to the number I come up with, 125,697, is about the between 29 and 30. That's the number of people we expect every 5 years to come on with cancer in that age group of around the year 29 to 30. But because that's a 5-year number, I have to divide it by 5 years. And this is the number I come up with. I come up with 25,000 people basically of around age 29 to 30 will come down with cancer every year. 25,139. But in order to make this number work, it gets weird here again, because I don't have exact numbers of the age group. I don't know. In other words, I don't know exactly how many 29-year-olds or how many 30-year-olds exist in this population that I'm having trying to use here. So I have to go yet another route. And this is what I've done. Like I say, it gets kind of confusing. So we have to discount those numbers in a way. Let's see, we'll go here next. We saw this chart already. What I want to do is I want to blow this up a little bit. And let's move it over so you can see. Basically what I've done here, this is per 100,000 people, all cancers, all sexes, all races. And we have a 500 mark here and a 0 mark here. I don't really have these numbers to show you what lies between 25 to 29. See, this is even a different age category again, because it's a 5-year age instead of a 10-year age like we were looking at before. So 25 to 29-year-olds and 30 to 34-year-olds, I want a number kind of between these two as an average. The number we already came up with, but it just says rates. This is rates per 100,000. And without knowing how many people are in the age brackets, I can't use those numbers like I found before. So what I've done was, this is a little less scientific, unfortunately, taken the 500 mark and the 0 mark, and I've measured, and I've actually found what this number about is. That's the way I had to do it. I'm sorry, because I don't have these exact numbers. I had to guesstimate. And so I actually physically measured this distance, drew a line on the 500 mark, and then started dividing it. And this number comes to about 60. 60 deaths per 100,000 of the age group of basically 29 to 30-year-olds, right in that age right there. So, and you can kind of see that if you measure this out with your eye, you can see it's probably less than 100. So I come up with 60. Now, I can have a way of double checking that somewhat by going here again. So I've taken that 60. We have about 60 out of 100,000 people of age 29. And we took that as a percentage, and we find that 0.06% of people, of 100,000 people on age 29 would be expected to get cancer every year. That's the number we came up with. 0.06% of 29-year-olds should be expected to get cancer every year. Nationwide statistics, regardless, doesn't have anything to do with Fukushima. This is just the general population, people that weren't exposed to Fukushima. All right? So, to double check this number, what I've done here is we have a percentage here we already calculated based on these numbers, and for this age group, it was 0.034%, and for this a higher age group, it was 0.08%. And you'll see this 0.06% number does kind of fit in between these the way it should. So this is the way I've double checked my numbers to come up with an approximate number here. All right. Again, not very scientific. And okay, lastly, 0.06% of 24,000 servicemen. Okay, we're not talking about 100,000 anymore because we don't have 100,000 people we're dealing with here. We have 24,000 people. There's 24,000 servicemen that were involved in that incident. So many people were involved in the incident. So 0.06% of that comes to 14.4 people, 14.5 people of 29-year-olds. Remember, we average, this is 29-year-olds, this is the average for the military. So 14.5 people would be expected to get cancer every year. So this is the final number we got of 29-year-olds that would be expected to get cancer every year. So these are all guesstimates and rough estimates, but this number now, you would have to multiply. This is only for 1 year. So if you want to take an 8-year period, you have to multiply this by 8 since the accident. Or if you just want to take the time up towards the lawsuit, you would add 3 years or 4 years, depending what number you see online. This is the number you want to multiply by the number of years to get the expected number of 29-year-olds that would have cancer of natural causes without any relation to Fukushima whatsoever or the military. In the general population, we expect 14.44 people that are 29 years old to get cancer every single year. So this is the number we used, and that's the final number in this category that we would use to expect to see the general populace get cancer every year. All right, this next portion is going to be a little more straightforward and a lot less controversial. This is from a Wikipedia page. This is basically demographics of the U.S. And by year, population and live births. This is the column we're going to be looking at, live births. So go down to the years in question here, and you can see from 2011 to 2017, we have numbers here, and we're hovering really close to 4 million. At times it was 4 million, over 4 million, but right now, generally in the last number of years, we've been hovering right around 4 million. So we're going to use 4 million as a number here to make it a little easier instead of going through all those details. But then we need to find out the birth defect rate. All right. Facts about birth defects from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. 1 in every 33 babies are born in the United States with a birth defect. Quite a bit bigger number than I expected, but 1 in 33 babies born in the U.S. are born with some kind of birth defect. And if we go to this page, every 4.5 minutes a baby is born with a birth defect. Nearly 120,000 babies are born with birth defects each year. 120,000 each year. So now that we know the population, we know a population to be 120,000 every year. Well, the population is 4 million births, and 120,000 of those are birth defects. That comes to 3%. So roughly 3% of live births are born with birth defects, or 1 out of every 33 babies born in the U.S. 3%. Now, without jumping ahead here, you don't have to read on. Now, as a side note, before we go on, under causes on that same page, you can pause this and read it or go look it up yourself, but the word radiation is not even on here anywhere. So it's questionable whether or not this, especially this low level that was received, would have anything to do with any birth defect. But you read it yourself, look it up. I'm not saying radiation cannot cause birth defects. I'm just saying the levels of radiation found here were nowhere and anywhere concerned, according to health authorities. But going back to this, if we take that number now, 24,000 births, here's the way I had to figure this now. 24,000 births. So that would mean, what I'm getting at here is the fact that there is 24,000 service members that were exposed to this supposed cloud of radiation. So 24,000 births, we would expect 720 birth defects. In other words, if there were 24,000 babies born, we would expect to see 720 of them have birth defects, based on the 3% number. Now, think about this. Of the ages we're talking about, the average age of being around 29, that is of childbearing age. This is a generalization by me, the rest of it now. If only 1/2 of those 24,000 people had only 1 child in their lifetime, that would be 12,000 babies. Now, of course, some people will have more and some people will have less, but let's just take a general number here. I think it's fair to assume that out of 24,000 people, probably half of them would have a child, 1 child. So we're taking this 12,000 babies. Of 12,000 babies, we would expect 360 of them to have birth defects from the 24,000 servicemen. So this is a generalization by me. I don't have statistics on this. I'm just using some logic, common sense logic here. If there were 12,000 babies born to these 24,000 servicemen in the lifetime, 24,000 births, 24,000 servicemen, and 12,000 babies, both male and female, because remember, some of the assertions is the male chromosome is messed up and the sperm is creating a birth defect. So it's men and women. We would expect about 360 birth defects in a lifetime. Now, lifetime, you would have to say, of childbearing age, you probably have to say around 20 to 25 years. So you probably have to divide that number by about 25 to come up with a rough idea of year of birth defects would be expected by 24,000 servicemen each year. So that's the final number I used. Divide by whatever number of years you want. That's the number I used.